The year of our Lord 1349 dawned bleak upon Boston, not with storms of wind and rain, but with a far more insidious tempest, the Black Death. The pestilence had crept from ship to shore, a silent assassin cloaked in shadows, and now held the town in its grim embrace. Fear was the daily bread, and death the constant companion. Within the walls of the convent of St. Jude, Sister Agnes sought solace in prayer. The weight of the town's suffering pressed heavily upon her soul. Each cough, each fevered brow, was a testament to the plague's relentless advance, a challenge to her faith in a benevolent God. The convent infirmary was a battlefield against despair. Sister Agnes moved tirelessly from bed to bed, offering what comfort she could, a cool compress, a soothing word, a whispered prayer. But even her unwavering compassion could not stem the tide of death. Master Elias, the town physician, wrestled with the unseen enemy. His knowledge, gleaned from ancient texts and hard-won experience, seemed woefully inadequate against this swift and merciless killer. Each day brought fresh horrors, each body a riddle he could not solve. Night after night, Master Elias sought answers in his books, hoping to decipher the secrets of the plague. But the ancient remedies offered little solace, the wisdom of the ancients proving impotent against this modern scourge. Doubt gnawed at his resolve, threatening to overwhelm him. On the outskirts of town, Thomas, the tanner, labored under the shadow of death. The plague had decimated his workforce, leaving him struggling to keep his business afloat. The demand for leather remained, but few dared venture near the tannery, fearing contagion. Thomas's greatest fear was for his family. He held them close each night, praying for their safety, knowing that the plague could strike at any moment, turning his world to ashes. The future felt uncertain, each sunrise a fragile gift. In the town square, Beatrice, the baker's wife, continued her work, but the joy had gone from her labor. The aroma of freshly baked bread could not mask the fear that permeated the town. Each loaf was a reminder of the dwindling supplies, the growing desperation. Scarcity bred suspicion and resentment. Beatrice found herself increasingly besieged by desperate townsfolk, their pleas turning to demands, their eyes filled with a hunger that went beyond bread. The bonds of community were fraying under the strain of the plague. Near the harbor, an unseen threat loomed. A vast vat of molasses, a sticky tide of sweetness, stood poised to unleash its own form of destruction upon the already beleaguered town. Few noticed the cracks that marred its surface, the whispers of impending disaster drowned out by the clamor of fear and death. As dusk settled over Boston, Sister Agnes watched from her window. The town, once vibrant with life, now seemed to shrink and wither under the weight of the plague. Hope, like the setting sun, was fading fast. As the last rays of light disappeared, Boston braced itself for another night of terror. The Black Death stalked the shadows, and an unknown peril waited in the wings, ready to unleash its own dark plague upon the unsuspecting town. The shadow of death loomed large, and the fate of Boston hung precariously in the balance. Near the bustling, plague-ridden docks of Boston, a silent giant loomed, the Molasses vat. Constructed hastily to hold the burgeoning imports of the sweet, dark substance from the West Indies, it stood as a testament to Boston's growing trade and a symbol of the colony's sweet-toothed desires. Yet, its presence inspired unease, a sense of something unnatural and threatening, particularly in a time already fraught with dread. The molasses trade was the lifeblood of many in Boston. It sweetened their meager meals, fueled the rum distilleries, and filled the coffers of merchants. Ships arrived weekly, their holds laden with the sticky cargo, destined for the vat and then to kitchens and taverns across the town. But with the plague decimating the workforce, the usual bustle was replaced by a grim, hurried pace. The work was critical, but the risk of infection hung heavy in the air. Master Elias, ever observant, cast a wary eye upon the vat. Its construction seemed precarious, the wood groaning under the immense weight of its contents. He voiced his concerns to anyone who would listen, warning of potential disaster, but his words were often dismissed as the ramblings of a worried old man. "Such a weight," he muttered, "confined by so little. It cannot hold forever." Even Sister Agnes, devoted to her prayers and the care of the sick, felt a prickle of unease whenever she glimpsed the looming vat from the convent garden. It seemed a monstrous, unnatural thing, a vessel of dark sweetness holding an untold potential for calamity. She prayed for the safety of the town, her heart heavy with premonition. From his tannery on the outskirts of town, Thomas often saw the vat shimmering in the distance. He knew its importance, but the sheer volume of the molasses it held was unsettling. He had a practical man's distrust of anything too big, too unnatural. He hoped the builders knew their trade better than the plague doctors seemed to know theirs. Beatrice, the baker's wife, overheard the whispers, the rumors of cracks in the vat, of groaning timbers. She needed the molasses for her gingerbread, a small comfort in these dark times, but the thought of the vat bursting filled her with dread. One disaster was enough. She couldn't bear the thought of another. Winter tightened its grip on Boston. A record snowfall buried the town, silencing the usual noises of the docks and the market. The weight of the snow added to the burden already pressing down on the town's spirits and on the aging timbers of the molasses vat. For a few fleeting hours, the snow offered a brief respite. Children, oblivious to the dangers lurking around them, played in the streets, their laughter a fragile counterpoint to the deathly silence that had gripped the town. Even in the darkest of times, life found a way to assert itself. As quickly as it had arrived, the snow began to melt. A sudden warm spell descended upon Boston, turning the pristine white landscape into a muddy, treacherous mire. The rapid thaw placed further stress on the vat, the wood expanding and contracting, groaning under the strain. Master Elias, observing the thaw, hurried to the docks. The sight that greeted him confirmed his worst fears. New cracks had appeared on the vat, wider and deeper than before. Dark streaks of molasses oozed from the seams, a sticky testament to the impending disaster. "It will not hold," he whispered to himself. "It will not hold." An unnatural stillness settled over Boston. The usual sounds of the harbor were muted, replaced by an unsettling quiet. Even the rats seemed to sense the impending doom, disappearing from the streets, seeking refuge from the coming storm, a storm of molasses, thick and suffocating. The first sign was subtle, a trickle, a thin stream of dark molasses oozing from a newly formed crack in the vat's side. It was a silent scream, a desperate plea for release from the immense pressure within. The rumblings beneath had begun. The air hung thick with the cloying sweetness of molasses, a deceptive fragrance masking the impending disaster. The vat, swollen beyond its capacity, groaned under the weight of its syrupy burden, a dark portent unnoticed by the preoccupied townsfolk, their minds consumed by the pestilence. A low rumble, like the growl of a slumbering beast, resonated from within the vat. Then, with a deafening crack, the wooden staves buckled. A fissure appeared, widening rapidly, releasing a trickle of dark fluid that quickly escalated into a torrent. The eruption was cataclysmic. The entire side of the vat disintegrated, unleashing a wave of molasses, a viscous, suffocating tide that surged outwards with terrifying force. The sound was a monstrous roar, a symphony of splintering wood and gurgling liquid. The wave of molasses slammed into the docks with relentless power. Warehouses splintered and dissolved, their contents swept away in the dark tide. The air filled with the scent of sugar and the screams of those caught unaware. The molasses surged through the narrow streets of Boston, a dark river carrying debris and despair. Cobblestones disappeared beneath the sticky flow, transforming familiar pathways into treacherous currents. Sister Agnes, tending to the sick within the convent, heard the approaching roar. She rushed to the doorway, her heart sinking as she witnessed the molasses tide engulfing the streets, knowing its suffocating touch would only worsen the suffering. Thomas, the tanner, fought against the molasses surge, his powerful legs churning through the sticky mass. He dragged his wife and children towards the higher ground, their faces contorted in terror, the sweet scent of molasses a cruel mockery of their desperate struggle. Beatrice, the baker's wife, stood frozen as the molasses poured into her bakery. Loaves of bread, once symbols of her livelihood and status, floated in the dark liquid, a bitter testament to the ruin that had befallen her. Master Elias, struggling through the chaos, reached a victim trapped in the molasses. He recognized the new terror the flood brought. The sticky substance clogged airways, hindering breathing and trapping those already weakened by the plague. It was pestilence compounded by catastrophe. Amidst the chaos, acts of desperate heroism emerged. People risked their own lives to pull others from the molasses, their efforts hampered by the unrelenting stickiness. Each rescue was a battle against the suffocating tide. As the initial surge subsided, the true horror of the disaster became clear. The streets were littered with debris and bodies, coated in a thick layer of molasses. The sweet scent of sugar mingled with the stench of death, a sickening reminder of the day's tragedy. Sister Agnes knelt amidst the devastation, her rosary clutched in her calloused hands. She prayed for the souls lost to both the plague and the flood, and for the strength of those who remained, tasked with rebuilding a shattered world. The world had turned to treacle. Thomas fought against the viscous tide, each step a monumental effort. His home, usually a sanctuary, was now an island in a sea of molasses. He prayed his wife and children were still alive, trapped but unharmed. Agnes, despite her age, possessed a strength born of compassion. She strained to free a child ensnared by the molasses, the sweet, sticky substance a perverse parody of life's sweetness. Each rescued soul was a victory against the encroaching darkness. Elias cursed under his breath. The molasses complicated every treatment, sealing wounds and fostering infection. The plague was a known enemy, but this sweet, suffocating tide was an insidious new torment. He felt helpless against its pervasive reach. Beatrice surveyed the ruins of her bakery. Her ovens, once the heart of the community, were silent. The molasses had claimed everything, leaving behind a sticky, inedible mess. The town was starving and she had nothing to offer. Thomas finally reached his home. The door creaked open, revealing a horrifying tableau. Furniture floated in the molasses-filled room, and the air was thick with the smell of death and decay. Where were his family? Agnes knelt beside the body of a young woman, her face pale and lifeless. The twin plagues had claimed another soul. Agnes prayed for solace, for the strength to continue, even as doubt gnawed at her faith. Elias fought to clear the molasses from a man's airways, but the sticky substance clung stubbornly. The man's rasping breaths grew weaker. Elias knew his efforts were futile, another casualty of this relentless plague. Despite her own loss, Beatrice found the strength to share what little remained. A few loaves of bread, salvaged from the wreckage, were divided among the starving. It was a small gesture, but it offered a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Thomas plunged deeper into the wreckage, his voice hoarse from shouting. "Eliza, Samuel!" He searched frantically, his heart pounding with dread. Had he lost everything? The convent became a refuge for the orphaned and displaced. Agnes cradled a small child, her heart aching for the lost generation. She would do everything in her power to protect them, to offer them a future in a world consumed by death. Elias watched as the sun rose, casting a golden glow on the sticky devastation. The molasses, a symbol of both sweetness and destruction, had irrevocably changed Boston. He knew that understanding this new plague was crucial to saving what remained. Thomas emerged from his home carrying his daughter. Eliza clung to him, her small body trembling. He had found her miraculously alive, clinging to a floating piece of wood. But his wife Mary was gone, claimed by the molasses and the plague. He clutched Eliza tightly, a promise to rebuild, to honor Mary's memory, and to face the future, however bleak, with unwavering resolve. The sweetness of survival was laced with the bitter tang of loss. Dawn broke on a Boston entombed. The molasses, now cooled and viscous, clung to everything. St. Jude's, usually a sanctuary of peace, was defiled, its stones slick with the sticky shroud. The sweet scent, once enticing, now carried the grim promise of death. Master Elias fought against the molasses as much as the plague. The sticky morass hampered his efforts, each movement a struggle. The dead were now entombed in sweetness, a grotesque mockery of rest. The physician knew that the unsanitary conditions bred by the molasses would only accelerate the spread of the pestilence. Thomas joined the grim work of clearing the dead. The molasses impeded every step, turning a simple task into an agonizing ordeal. Despair threatened to engulf him, but the thought of his family kept him moving. The stench of death mingled with the cloying sweetness, a horrific perfume clinging to the air. Beatrice, her bakery a sticky ruin, salvaged what she could. The dwindling supplies of flour were precious, and she rationed them carefully. The hungry eyes of the townsfolk haunted her. The molasses had stolen not only lives but also the last vestiges of civility. Back at St. Jude's, Sister Agnes fought a losing battle. The infirmary was overflowing, each cough, each fevered breath, a reminder of the relentless plague. The molasses only compounded their suffering, attracting flies and fostering infection. Faith was tested in the face of such overwhelming despair. Master Elias, driven to the edge of his understanding, sought answers in his books. He suspected a connection between the molasses and the worsening plague. Was the sweet liquid merely a carrier, or did it somehow amplify the disease? The answers remained elusive, lost in the fog of medieval knowledge. As night fell, fear gripped the town. The breakdown of order was almost complete. Thomas, his heart heavy with dread, stood watch over his family, protecting them from both the plague and the desperate scavengers. The molasses-covered streets offered no safety, only a sticky reminder of their vulnerability. Beatrice mourned not only the loss of her livelihood, but also the loss of her community. The bonds that once held them together had dissolved in the sticky tide of despair. She wondered if Boston could ever recover from this double plague, this confluence of death and destruction. Sister Agnes sought solace in prayer, but even faith felt fragile in the face of such devastation. She questioned the will of God, yet she clung to the hope that even in the deepest darkness, a spark of divine grace could endure. She prayed for strength, not only for herself but for all those who suffered. Master Elias, despite his exhaustion, refused to give up. He experimented with different remedies, searching for anything that might alleviate the suffering. He knew that his knowledge was limited, but he also knew that he was the town's only hope. The plague and the molasses had tested him to his limits, but he would not yield. Slowly, painstakingly, the town began to stir. The sun broke through the clouds, offering a glimmer of hope. Thomas, his body aching, joined the effort to clear the molasses. The task seemed impossible, but with each step, with each shovelful, a sense of purpose began to return. The community, though scarred, was not broken. In the ruins of her bakery, Beatrice began anew. The oven, miraculously spared, offered warmth and hope. With Sister Agnes's help, she baked bread, a symbol of resilience in the face of despair. The molasses still clung to the streets, a constant reminder of the tragedy, but it could not extinguish the enduring spirit of Boston. The town, though forever changed, would rebuild, one loaf of bread at a time. The shelves of Beatrice's bakery, once laden with golden loaves and sweet pastries, stood bare. The scent of fresh bread, which once permeated the town square, was replaced by the cloying odor of molasses and the ever-present stench of decay. The townsfolk, driven by hunger and fear, had become a ravenous mob, their pleas for bread turning into desperate demands. Thomas stood vigilant, the leather apron he always wore now serving as a makeshift shield. The breakdown of order had reached the outskirts of town. He had heard whispers of raiding parties, driven mad by hunger, and his heart ached. The tannery, once a place of honest work, was now a fortress against the encroaching chaos. Sister Agnes, her heart heavy with sorrow, sought solace in prayer. The convent, once a refuge, was now overflowing with the sick and dying. The endless stream of suffering tested her faith, yet she clung to the hope that divine mercy would prevail. She prayed not for deliverance, but for the strength to endure. Master Elias, his face etched with exhaustion, tirelessly tended to the afflicted. The molasses sickness, with its suffocating grip, confounded his understanding. He desperately sought a remedy, poring over ancient texts and experimenting with herbal concoctions, but the sticky plague continued its relentless march. Beatrice watched in dismay as the townsfolk descended into savagery. The bonds of community, once so strong, had frayed under the weight of hunger and despair. The desperation for food had turned neighbors into enemies, their humanity consumed by the primal need to survive. Thomas divided the last of their dried meat, his heart heavy with the knowledge that it wouldn't last long. He looked at his wife and children, their faces gaunt with hunger, and vowed to protect them, no matter the cost. The responsibility weighed heavily on his broad shoulders. Sister Agnes cradled the frail child in her arms, whispering words of comfort and faith. Death was a constant companion in the convent, but the passing of each innocent life tore at her soul. She prayed for the child's swift passage to heaven, and for an end to the suffering that gripped the town. Master Elias, fueled by desperation, delved deeper into ancient medical texts. He sought any clue, any forgotten remedy that might combat the twin plagues of pestilence and molasses. His hope rested on a forgotten passage, a whispered remedy, a path to understanding in a world shrouded in darkness. Beatrice parted with her last possession of value, her silver ring, trading it for a meager handful of grain. The symbol of her former life was now a sacrifice to survival. The despair that washed over her was almost as suffocating as the molasses itself. Thomas, witnessing the looting, confronted the marauders, his rage burning hotter than the vats of tanning solution he once used. He would not stand idly by while they preyed on the weak and vulnerable. His protective instincts roared to life. Sister Agnes, guided by Master Elia's instructions, administered a new potion to a patient struggling against the molasses sickness. It was a small act of defiance against the overwhelming despair, a desperate gamble that offered a glimmer of hope in the face of utter darkness. Master Elias, overlooking the devastated town, felt a surge of resolve. Though darkness had descended upon Boston, he refused to surrender to despair. He would continue to fight, to learn, to heal, driven by a belief in the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of hope. The air crackled with accusations. Fingers pointed towards the absent owners of the Molasses Company, their greed now a tangible villain in the eyes of the distraught populace. Whispers turned to shouts, demanding retribution for the devastation. Fear gnawed at Beatrice. The anger of the mob was a tangible thing, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the chaos would consume them all, even those, like herself, who had lost everything. Elias watched the unfolding drama with a heavy heart. He knew that anger was a dangerous disease, capable of spreading faster and causing more damage than any plague. He feared for the future of Boston. A vigilante group began to coalesce, fueled by grief and a thirst for vengeance. Thomas, driven by the loss of his neighbors and the ever-present threat to his family, joined their ranks, seeking a target for his rage. Sister Agnes, her heart heavy with sorrow, stepped forward, attempting to quell the rising tide of anger. She pleaded for reason, for compassion, reminding them of their shared humanity in the face of the dual disasters. Beatrice watched Sister Agnes's efforts with a cynical eye. She had seen too much despair, too much ugliness, to believe that kindness could truly prevail against the rising tide of hatred. Still, a flicker of hope remained. Elias, fearing for Agnes's safety, approached her, his voice low and urgent. He knew that reason rarely prevailed in the face of such intense emotion. He urged her to be careful, to retreat before the mob turned on her. Thomas watched Sister Agnes with disdain. He saw her pleas for peace as weakness, a betrayal of the anger that burned within him. He was determined to find someone to blame, someone to pay for the devastation that had befallen his town. Agnes refused to yield. She believed that even in the darkest of times, compassion and understanding were the only paths to salvation. She met Elias' concern with a steady gaze, her faith unshaken. Despite her cynicism, Beatrice's heart softened when she saw a starving child. She offered him a loaf of bread, a small act of kindness in a world consumed by despair, a testament to her lingering humanity. Elias returned to his work, tending to the sick and dying. He knew that his efforts were a mere drop in the ocean, but he refused to succumb to despair. He would continue to fight, to heal, to offer what little comfort he could. As night deepened, Thomas and the vigilantes moved towards their target, their hearts filled with anger and a desperate desire for justice. The whispers of blame had hardened into a plan, a dangerous path towards retribution. Despite the scarcity, Beatrice found a reserve of flour untouched by the molasses. With each loaf she baked, she whispered a prayer, hoping to nourish not only bodies but also spirits. Thomas, ever vigilant, volunteered to help Beatrice distribute her bread, navigating the treacherous streets with a grim determination. Each delivery was a risk, but the thought of feeding the hungry spurred him on. At the convent, Sister Agnes tirelessly nursed the sick, offering not only physical comfort but also spiritual solace. Her presence was a beacon of hope in the darkening days. Driven by a desperate need to understand the molasses sickness, Master Elias tirelessly reviewed every medical text he possessed, seeking any clue to alleviate the suffering. He observed that those who could keep water down seemed to fare slightly better. He started experimenting with diluted vinegar and herbs, seeking a way to cut through the cloying sweetness that choked his patients. The brew was bitter, but it seemed to ease the grip of the molasses, allowing some to breathe easier, to find a moment's respite from the suffocating sweetness. Beatrice's bread was more than sustenance. It was a symbol of shared humanity, a reminder that even in the depths of despair, compassion could still flourish. Thomas, seeing the need for order, began clearing the streets, urging others to join him. With each piece of debris removed, a small victory was won against the encroaching chaos. Sister Agnes, beyond tending to the sick, offered solace to the grieving, reminding them that even in the face of such devastation, faith and love endured. Master Elias, knowing the limits of his own knowledge, shared his discoveries with other healers, hoping that their collective wisdom could bring further relief to the afflicted. The sight of the children sharing the bread brought a flicker of joy to Beatrice's heart, a testament to the enduring resilience of the human spirit. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the recovering town, Thomas, Sister Agnes, and Master Elias stood together, weary but resolute. Though the path ahead remained uncertain, the small acts of kindness and selflessness had ignited a spark of hope, a promise of a future rebuilt on compassion and community. The dawn arrived tentatively, pushing back the darkness that had consumed Boston for so long. Sister Agnes found solace in prayer, her heart heavy with the weight of the lives lost and the monumental task ahead. Yet, a flicker of hope remained, fueled by the sight of survivors stirring from their slumber. Master Elias, weary but resolute, continued his rounds, the lines on his face etched deeper by exhaustion. The plague still lingered, a shadow lurking in the corners of the town, but its grip seemed to weaken with each passing day. The molasses, while a horror in itself, seemed to have indirectly stemmed the spread by sheer disruptive force. Thomas, his hands raw but his spirit unbroken, organized teams to begin the arduous task of cleaning the streets. The molasses, thick and stubborn, required relentless effort to dislodge. Yet with each bucket of water poured and each section cleared, a sense of purpose and shared hope washed over the community. Beatrice, her oven blazing, baked tirelessly. The aroma of fresh bread, a comforting scent long absent, filled the air, drawing smiles from faces etched with fatigue. Food, she knew, was not just sustenance but also a symbol of hope, a promise of a return to normalcy. The dead, claimed by both plague and molasses, needed tending. Sister Agnes, her heart aching, offered solace to the bereaved, her words a balm on wounds that seemed too deep to heal. Each burial was a testament to the lives lost and a promise of remembrance. Master Elias, driven by a thirst for knowledge, immersed himself in ancient texts, searching for patterns and explanations. He knew that understanding the enemy was the first step towards defeating it, even if that enemy was as elusive as the plague. Thomas, finding purpose in action, helped rebuild the shattered homes, his strong hands restoring walls and roofs. He knew that a community was only as strong as its shelters, and he worked tirelessly to provide that strength. Beatrice, seeing the future in the eyes of the children, taught them the art of baking, passing on not just a skill but a legacy of resilience and hope. She wanted to ensure that the comforting aroma of bread would always fill the town. Sister Agnes, finding solace in the rhythm of nature, tended the convent garden, planting seeds of hope for the future. She knew that even in the face of death, life would find a way to bloom again. Master Elias, realizing the limitations of his knowledge, began to train a new generation of healers, emphasizing the importance of sanitation and observation. He hoped that future plagues would be met with greater understanding and preparedness. Thomas, standing with his family, watched the sunset over a slowly recovering Boston. The town was scarred, but it was also stronger, bound together by shared loss and renewed purpose. He had found his place in helping to rebuild and protect his community. Boston, forever marked by the year of plague and molasses, began to heal. The people, forged in the crucible of disaster, had rediscovered the value of community, resilience, and the simple joys of life. Though the scars remained, they served as a reminder of the darkness they had overcome and the hope that had guided them through. The dawn broke on a changed Boston. The molasses, though diminished, remained a sticky testament to the disaster. Yet, amidst the ruins, life stirred. Sister Agnes found a renewed sense of purpose, her faith tested but not broken. Master Elias, ever the scholar, meticulously documented the effects of both plagues. He sought understanding in the face of incomprehensible suffering, driven by a desire to prevent such devastation from ever occurring again. Thomas, with his calloused hands and unwavering spirit, began to rebuild his tannery. Each nail hammered was a testament to his resilience, a refusal to surrender to despair. He would provide for his family and contribute to the town's recovery. Beatrice, her heart softened by the shared suffering, found solace in her community. Her rebuilt bakery became a beacon of hope, the scent of baking bread a symbol of renewal and the enduring spirit of Boston. Sister Agnes dedicated herself to caring for the survivors, tending to their wounds, both physical and spiritual. She found strength in her faith and purpose in her service to others. The rebuilt infirmary was a testament to her devotion. Master Elias, fueled by a newfound humility, meticulously studied ancient texts, seeking knowledge to prevent future catastrophes. The failures of the past spurred him to relentless pursuit of understanding. The memory of the twin plagues drove him to uncover truths previously unknown. Thomas, amidst the stench and toil of the tannery, found joy in teaching his son the ancient trade. He instilled in him not just skills, but also the values of hard work, perseverance, and community. The future would be built on the shoulders of the young. Beatrice, forever changed by the events, dedicated her life to acts of kindness. She shared her bread with the hungry, offered comfort to the grieving, and helped to rebuild the shattered social fabric of Boston. Her actions symbolized a community forged in the crucible of disaster. Years passed, and the scars of the molasses mire and the Black Death began to fade, but the memories remained. Sister Agnes continued to find solace in her faith, offering prayers for the living and the dead. Master Elias, his hair now entirely gray, passed on his knowledge to a new generation of physicians. He hoped that their understanding would prevent future tragedies and ensure the well-being of the town. Thomas, his tannery now a thriving enterprise, looked back on the horrors of the past with a mix of sorrow and pride. He had survived, he had rebuilt, and he had ensured a future for his family. Beatrice, surrounded by the laughter of children and the comforting aroma of bread, knew that Boston would endure. The molasses mire and the Black Death had left their mark, but they had also revealed the strength and resilience of the human spirit. And that spirit would always prevail. Boston was a town reborn.